Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to the massive cast assessment for Big Brother Fiore. We're gonna go through. Currently, it's like day 43 at final three, but we're gonna kind of backtrack a little bit and go through some of the things that happened earlier in the game. Kind of wrap up our thoughts, and then we're gonna talk about each player a little bit. So I guess we'll jump right in and we'll go ahead and begin with week 7. So the kind of highlights for that week. This was Haley's second HOH win. It was the final week of pre-jury where she renommed Amanda next to Jakey and Amanda left. What do you guys what looking back do you think of that week now?
I think that week was one of the most important weeks of the whole game. It pretty much set the trend for the whole first half of jury. I think it really defined the sides and kind of instigated that Sovereign Six, I think they were called, alliance. And I think it kind of was the beginning of the end of the marching band and that whole side. That's my brief thoughts.
Yeah, that week was definitely one of the most pivotal, with, obviously Jakey being the intended target for Merchant Band, but him being able to rally up the other side of the house to blindside Amanda, and then, as Ali said, it was the beginning of the end for Merchant Band, as we saw they all went consecutively. So, overall, that week was probably one of the most interesting of the whole game, because of how critical it was to literally every person in the game.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because we during that time in the game, it was the underdogs were Lana, Mikki, Addilyn, Elise, that kind of side of the house. And then literally because of that week, it completely shifted everything. And it was kind of what kind of made me realize how I watch Big Brother and how I watch games that I host is that regardless of who's on the bottom usually they're so much more attractive to root for versus whoever's in power, because I think in the weeks that followed this one I was oh, I'm so sick of the Sovereign Six, whatever, break it up. But then at this moment it was so iconic. They put all their vote burners to use. They had everything kind of set in the right ways that really made for a from the bottom blindside, which is really iconic and also really rare on a newbie season. So I have to give credit to that group of people, especially Jakey, Mikki, Addilyn, and Lana. They were definitely at the head of it, so that was really cool to see looking back.
I also think it's really validating to see twists play out. And I thought it was so interesting to see how the vote burners affected that week, because there was theoretically enough vote burners for it to be a 0 vote week, so it had to be a very Survivor style blindside. And I just thought that was very interesting, seeing a different kind of mentality play out that I think kind of led to that side versus side psychology that meant people were just not betraying anyone for the first half of jury.
Yeah, exactly. And it's still a little shocking, though, I can't lie, that some vote burns went unused when it was specified as the last week. But nonetheless, even as Nicholas said, it's there's something appealing about the minority and the underdogs, regardless of who it is. And as we all were at the time, we wanted something to happen. We were fuck the Merchant Band. That obviously changed afterwards, but that whole week was just adrenaline, and I hated seeing Amanda go. It was really smart for the people that did boo her, but I hated seeing, because I loved Amanda. But at the same time, it was she died for something to rise, and so it was a little bit okay.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it was so sad seeing Amanda go. It was definitely sad seeing someone who wasn't in that core marching band group kind of get the hit. Kind of what happened to Daly. It was just wrong place, wrong time sort of a situation. And it's kind of Haley sent home, like, 2 of their own numbers on her HOHs. So it was kind of sad.
Which is funny because it was even like a number for Haley directly, because both Daly and Amanda were like fine targets for her. But it probably wasn't the best people to take out necessarily.
Yeah.
I think her 2 HOHs, I think either of them in isolation was fine because it brought her up the pecking order of her own side and kind of solidified herself. The problem was both in combination was self-hit before you're taken up. She needed to have like one where Daly left and one where Addilyn left, or one where Amanda left and one where Mikki left, something like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it just kind of like, it was a lot. And it was a lot of people thinking like, oh, Haley like fucked my game. Like kind of a thing. When she actually was playing like a pretty good game at that point. But, the other like 2 things. So one, Jakey taking the Devil's deal, which was like really interesting because it made everyone think that he knew that he was going home because he took a deal that was like, oh, here's $10 to post your trust list. And then he used that to be like, well, I'm going home, so I might as well get $10. And like, that was kind of interesting to see how that made people feel like, oh, well, now he's getting $10 on his way out.
Like him and Mikki both played that week really well. Mikki obviously was clutching a veto as the intended renom, and then using it on Addilyn, which kind of was like the catapult for the whole kind of revolution, I guess. But then also Jakey too with gathering everyone, as you said, with like taking the deal, being like, if I'm going out, at least I'm making some money out of it, and then like totally just sneaking under everybody's noses to help execute the plan. So,
God, I forgot that was the week that Mikki was going crazy, being like, Addilyn, I'm going to veto you. Actually, you know what? Pop a spot on the blog, and then it's like going back and forth, and that was so funny. I forgot that was a big bad.
Yeah, that's what my second thing was. Like, it was so crazy. Like, I'm gonna veto you. No, I'm not gonna veto you. I'm so sorry. No, I'm vetoing Jakey. I'm so sorry. And then it was like, oh, I have to veto Addilyn. And I was like, I feel like that was the right decision for her. But yeah, she really like came through with a veto win when she needed it the most that week.
Yeah, especially since Addilyn got second place in that comp, and had Mikki not won it, Addilyn did. Mikki goes up as a renom, and Jakey goes home most likely, like, easily. But the whole, like, beginning of the end for the marching band doesn't necessarily start then. And maybe that would have made for a more, like, interesting, dynamic jury, but, like, it was really clutch, despite her hectic decision-making skills. But
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we'll head on to week number 8. So this was, excuse me, this was the Flash Fire week. And Ferg won HOH, nominated Mazden and Sara. Austin didn't use the veto on Sara, and then Sara went home because of it. I mean, I guess, like, the only thing of that week that, like, stands out in hindsight is that this was, like, the beginning, well, not the beginning of the end of the marching band, but, like, this was, like, once this happened, it was, like, ooh, like, they're not even on the same page. Like, you have this group of 6, the Sovereign 6, who's literally, like, lockstep, totally on the same page. They know what they want to do. They have their target list. They're winning the comps to do it. Meanwhile, the marching band can't even, like, they win the comps, but they can't even veto each other. Like, it just, like, obviously, this veto decision ruined Austin's game. So, that's just what I take away from that week.
Only other thing is, I think he was denied such good TV of Addilyn as the renom, which is what would have happened. And that would have been so interesting to see and Addilyn on the block together and have their kind of sides be retested, considering that, like, Szymon wanted Mazden gone and stuff like that. Like, we were just denied some good TV there.
Yeah, like, honestly, I know we were told of Austin's reasoning of not wanting to choose. Also hearing that Haley apparently said don't veto her, regardless. And, like, this is not to, like, discredit Austin, because I think Austin played actually a pretty good game. But that decision not to use veto is definitely probably one of the worst decisions this season. Again, not to be offensive, but as Ali said too, like, not only would he have saved probably Sara in that case if Haley really did say don't veto me, and Sara obviously being such a competition like asset, but it would have forced an Addilyn renom, and while Addilyn wouldn't have went home most likely, it would have isolated Ferg from the majority alliance, and that would have been able to get the marching band like some crack to like break into. And so like that POV, if it was used, could have been so critical, but it was obviously interesting and unfortunate because the marching band slowly just started getting picked off.
Yeah, and I think had it not been like the format of the week, he definitely would have vetoed her. So I guess, like you said, like Austin did play like a really strong game. But I do think that was his major like stumbling block. And we were robbed of good TV. I think Addilyn going up would have been like a complete like crazy moment because it just would have changed the entire dynamics of the game with that 6, you know?
Because none of the Sovereign 6 otherwise had even considered nominating one of their own. Like, and so it would have been so, like, just different and interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would have enabled, like, it would have pushed Ferg more with the marching band, I feel like. Because I think they would have realized that by the reaction to the Sovereign 6, that Ferg did something, and I feel like they would have been capitalized on it. And I do agree, though, completely that if this was a normal week, it would have been different. And, like, it sucks to say that, but it also is interesting for a twist to have kind of that much influence over it. Because, like, you never see, like, Lightning Weeks, per se, actually change the decision-making big, but, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was kind of... And, like, Sara going was honestly, like, kind of shocking to me because I would not have predicted that she would have went, like, first round of jury. I think early on, I thought her and Austin were going to be kind of, like, the 2-0 at the end of the game that you're like, oh, my God, like, duh. So I think that was just, like, a complete, like, flip of the script to see her go out like that, too. Especially at the hands of an ally. Like, wow. Very sad for her.
Yeah, just to Sara was my winner pick. I think we were I think that was quite. We were like always like, oh, these swoopers, they're gonna forever be stuck together and they're gonna just run to the end. So just the way we were so wrong, and the swooper connection is what screwed Sara over, which is such an unexpected plot twist.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, yeah, I agree. We'll move on now to week number 9. So this was the week where Jakey bodied the HOH comp. Like, no one even scored a point besides him. And then he targeted, obviously, Austin and Haley, and they got Austin out. I feel like this week was kind of just like, it was kind of, for me, like, really big props to Jakey. Like, he went from literally almost being out of the game to, like, his game, like, flipped on its head. Like, then he was, like, able to stay and then make it through the flash fire and then win an HOH and really start to, like, sink his teeth into the game. And that's kind of what this week represented to me. And it obviously was, like, at this point, it was 3 of the 4 of the marching band were evicted when Austin left. And it was really shocking that Austin left, too. I, just like Sara, definitely would have seen them at the end. But yeah, I don't know. This week was very, like, foreshadowing. Had, like, such great foreshadowing for the rest.
Like, it wasn't the most, like, groundbreaking week, because, like, I think literally as soon as Jakey went HOH, you were like, oh, well, Austin's going home unless he wins VO, and if he wins VO, Hayley's going home. So it wasn't, like, groundbreaking, but it was just kind of, like, a continuation, and it kind of made sense. And I think that week, nobody made it. I think everybody played that week right. No one in the game messed up that week, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like, there's nothing, like, exciting, but it made sense. It happened. Again, Austin going at that point, the start of the week made sense and was expected, but as, like, Nick said himself, like, early on, didn't anticipate Austin would get, like, 10th. But
Yeah.
that week made sense. Like, pretty straightforward.
Something I want to bring up about this week that I still don't know if it's true because we never got confirmation from her or not. But my favourite part of this week was the fact that Mazden supposedly decided her vote on a coin flip. I think that is the most iconic thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. I feel like that's true. I don't have any, like, proof, but I just feel it. Like, when I heard that, I was like, yep, makes sense.
Yeah. And stand Mazden for not necessarily voting with the majority.
Yeah, and just doing whatever she wants. Queen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, like you guys said, I think that was, like, a very straightforward week. For some people, it was just, like, very easy to get through. I think that week was kind of where, like, it left Hayley just, like, alright, well, now what? Like, like, she's just kind of, like, a sitting duck. But, yeah. I guess we'll... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Because it leads us into next week.
Yeah.
Daly almost wins HOH.
Oh god.
Oh my god. That feels like so long ago. So I guess we'll dive into week 10. So Szymon won HOH, and this was the week where Mazden left next to Elise, which was very interesting. I don't know. I feel like the weeks, like, from this week to the following 2 weeks just kind of all blur together to me, just because it was kind of like the vibe of this part of the game was like Sovereign 6 has power. If you're not in that alliance, you're going to go home. Like,
Yeah.
especially that week and the week that followed. But I think Szymon did a good job of keeping Hayley safe that week. I feel like that was, like, not really expected of him, and he did that to kind of keep a shield in the game, so that was kind of interesting.
I really respected Szymon's consistent hustle to be like, you know what, it's good for my game to not put these house targets up, and I'm going to play my own game. But what I also thought was good is he didn't just go, fuck it, I'm going to do it. He would, like, manage it and explain it to his allies and justify it, so he would keep these house targets safe without pissing off the reason people who made them house targets.
Yeah, and I think another thing to add on to that, he managed to get out Mazden, which he was planning on doing early jury, anyways, because of the fact that she could easily snatch his spot in panel 2, and, like, getting Mazden out while also keeping Hayley safe as, like, a number for him and a shield. Like, he played the week really well. Still wish Hayley could have come up HOH, but, I think, again, like, as y'all said, like, these weeks, there's no standout moment. It was a good week, made sense, but it was just, like, nothing too eventful.
I have got one eventful thing that happened. I believe it was this week. Was Hayley messaging in the house chat where she meant to message Elise, being like, I think we can pull this off, I think we have the votes, and, like, the entire cast catching on and seeing, or it spreading, and just that was quite funny, but also that I was impressed with Hayley and Elise for linking up and being like, listen, Elise, I know I've nominated you because Hayley had nominated Elise. We haven't got anyone, let's make this work. I thought that was really flexible and, like, good, like, adapting gameplay.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I totally forgot that happened. That was crazy. Because especially since Jacob had done that earlier in the season, for that to happen twice, like, and it's kind of sad because it's like, they were two little, like little ducks trying to cross the road, and then there was an 18-wheeler truck, or I guess a 6-wheeler truck, coming at them. But yeah, no. I guess a general comment about Haley's, like, two HOHs, not to, like, talk about weeks in the past, was that, like, she nominated different, even though it was, like, week 5 and week 7, like, just 1 week separated them, like, she nominated completely different people. Like, she nominated, like, I think 6 different people. And it's, like, it could have been so easy to just, like, repeat noms, but I think it's a sign of a good player is someone who, like, changes their strategy and adapts their targets and adapts as the
100%.
game changes. So I definitely think that, like, that's very emblematic of her game. And, like, for someone new to do that, like, who's never played an org before, like, that shows really good insight.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
But I guess going back to this week, I don't know, I think it was interesting that this was kind of, like, I think one of Elise's, like, strongest points of her game is that she was able to stay against Mazden. And part of it was because she was such, at that point, like, a low threat to, like, win comp. She was kind of, like, on her own. But so many people, I think it was, like, 3 or 4 people at that point. I think 4 people had been evicted next to Mazden. And so that was kind of, like, an iconic, like, resume-building moment for her to be like, I'm the one who survived.
I also did just think that, like, from my hosting perspective, I thought that was the right time for Mazden to go, because I just think Mazden put, obviously her activity level wasn't the same as other players, but she put so much into the game over the time she had, and I thought, like, her going out for being an endgame, like, for someone that could take it up an endgame slot and for actually being voted out, was kind of the right end to her kind of arc, in a way.
Because, like, seeing her potentially get dragged to the end is, like, an easy spot in the final 2 wouldn't have been the most pleasing, both for her and the viewer standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think it was her time to go. I guess it's time to move on to the next week. So this is week 11. So it kind of, like, follows in the same, like, pattern. This was another HOH. So this was the one that Mikki won, where Elise and Haley came so close. Mikki did not want to win this comp, and she's like, fuck, damn it. Like, what am I going to do? Like, it was kind of like, I feel like this season there's been a lot of, like, Andy Heron, BB15 moments, where someone who's good with everyone wins HOH, and they're like, well, and then, like, everyone's in their DR, like, oh my god, I'm safe. Like, there's definitely another week where we'll talk about that later in the game, but this was one of those weeks, and I feel like Mikki had a lot of opportunities and a lot of different roads to take with this HOH because she had such strong, like, bonds, and it's like, obviously, she had to nominate 2 people, she had to get out Haley, and I think that they ended up, in hindsight, being really good for her game. I think she managed Haley really well with her HOH and veto win in the same week. Because sometimes that's hard. When someone goes home and the HOH had veto as well, and you send them home and they fought so hard, that can be, like, a really challenging thing to go through, especially in your first game. And I think Mikki did a really good job of, like, leveling with her and, like, sending her to jury without being bitter, but having, like, respect for her.
100%. When Mikki went HOH, I thought her game was over. I remember literally seeing it coming, I was like, oh, Mikki, no, you're going to literally become, like, a goat and piss off at everyone and lose at the end. And I was so impressed with how, like, she basically left with no enemies except for kind of Elise, who also forgave her. It was very interesting.
Another interesting thing was, this was kind of like the beginning of the actual end for Addilyn, and this was a week where Addilyn was like, I kind of want to resign, like, you can put me up. And then, like, I know Mikki and Addilyn were really close, but, from past experiences, to resist putting up somebody who straight up is like, you can put me up, especially when you're in a Mikki type spot where you have connections with literally everyone, like, I kind of respect her for being like, no, you're not leaving my HOH, no offense. Like, I mean, like, and I respected that kind of hustle and how she managed to recover and
Yeah.
send Haley out, which was a reasonable decision, and have Haley like respecting her injury.
Yeah. I think, and I also think at this point of the game, like, going back into, like, I guess what it was like and the perception during that moment was Mikki had won, like, vetoes and had done, like, that part of the game, but, like, hadn't won an HOH yet. Like, hadn't really, like, literally, like, your name is on it. Like, you can, because, like, vetoes and, like, votes, like, you can claim later as your move, but when you are HOH and you get someone out, like, people get a real glimpse into your game. And I think that this was the first time that people who were in the game got to see what she was actually up to and see what she was doing. Because I also think, like, at the beginning of the game, she portrayed herself to be, like, really weak and, like, really, like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And, like, that served her really well. But sometimes you can fall into a trap of being, like, perception is reality, and so people are like, oh, she's really weak, she doesn't know what she's doing here. But I think this week was kind of like the turning point of, like, people in jury being like, oh, like, she's bodying this, like, maybe she's up to something.
That's very true, actually. Like, obviously, she always had a presence, but I do feel like this was a turning point where she was like, I'm not just here to be, like, like, social, whatever, like, I can win comps, like, actual power comps, I can make moves, and I'm here to play. And, obviously, knowing now, because it is Final 3, how she's still in the game, and is basically one competition win away from potentially winning the game, like, it is, like, it was nice to see, because it was, like, she made her mark, and I feel like she proved herself by not letting it, like, not getting power hungry, but not fucking it up.
I think one other thing interesting to talk about is the fact that at one point in the week, Mikki's target was actually Elise, and she wanted Haley to stay to go after, like, Jakey and stuff, and how it was, I think it was Addilyn was the swing vote, and Addilyn decided to evict Haley, and that swung things. I just thought it was quite interesting that Addilyn went from not wanting to be in the game necessarily to being the swing vote.
Yeah.
And then her being like, I'm evicting Haley, like, right after the veto ceremony, and really not, like, letting Mikki have the fullest say. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because Mikki had kept Addilyn safe, obviously, when Addilyn was like, yeah, I'm ready to go, like, put me up, whatever. And Mikki, like, I remember reading Mikki's DR, and it was like, oh, I can get her to vote however, like, that's, like, my +1. And it was like, nope, Addilyn did what she wanted. Like, she kind of went off. So, yeah, that was a really good point. I guess. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Normally, I was going to see what you say, like, because normally when, like, a player's like, you know what, I'm done, like, I'm peacing out, it's quite, like, underwhelming as a host, but what was quite fulfilling is that even though Addilyn was kind of checked out, she was still playing the game and she was still being an active game presence, so it wasn't as, like, frustrating to watch as a host, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like, she didn't, like, give up and, like, she still put in effort. She was just like, when I go, it's over. Like,
yeah.
And honestly, with how Addilyn, I also respected Szymon for wanting to keep Haley, and then again, not conceding to majority dots, and still voting the way he did. And obviously there was a little beef with Elise and Szymon with past game history, but I always respect when people are like, I don't care what's majority, I'm voting how I want. Because obviously you see people like Ferg who flip back when there's not enough numbers, but see Szymon be like, yeah, fuck it, I'm keeping my vote on him. At least. It was just like, it's fun to see, especially for Szymon's archetype of being like the very under the radar middle person who's like not getting blood. To see him be like, who cares? It was like, it's nice, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I agree. I think that week was interesting to watch for sure. I guess we'll move on to week 12, which was our double eviction. So during the normal week 12, Ferg went HOH and he sent home Addilyn on his HOH after so they put up Jakey. So Ferg, okay, so I'm going to rephrase it. So Ferg went after the 6 and kept Elise safe. And then by nominating Jakey and Lana as a duo. And then when Jakey won the veto, Addilyn went up and went home. And then during the live night, Elise bodied the comps and sent home Jakey after nominating Jakey and Mikki. I guess just like as a whole, like going back to like Ferg's HOH reign pre the double, I guess. What'd you guys think of that?
I think it worked out in the long run. I think the 6 needed to break. That was so overdue, and I think it speaks high. It will look good to the jury. I think that Ferg was the one to like break the silence and do that. I think in general, what can be said about a lot about this endgame stretch, people needed to break up Szymon and Mikki and kind of kept fumbling the bag on that. But I think Ferg's HOH was good.
Yeah, I think it was really good. Like, the only the first, like, showed presence and, like, again, like, kind of like Mikki the week before where she's, like, proving herself to be a capable threat. Ferg did the same thing. I feel like he was really getting swept into the rug with the jury and a lot of, like, the perceptions of him, and he kind of broke that. And another smart thing with doing that, because since is two things. One, Addilyn being pegged as a trio threat, even though she resided, still like gave favor with him to the jury. And another thing was he was able to do that without getting like weirdly blood on his hands. Like obviously Jakey was really mad, but Jakey leaves the following week. Addilyn goes, she's not really bitter. Lana's not that mad at Ferg, and then Mikki is also still so trusting of Ferg because she was like, oh, Addilyn like wanted to go anyways. So, like, I think Ferg's situation was really, like, probably one of the strongest HOHs in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, as a whole.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is, like, looking at the arc of the jury phase, like, his HOH kind of set the tone, his first one, to, like, start getting out the marching band, like, he got out Sara. And then his HOH also kind of ended that by getting out Addilyn and kind of, like, showing that he could do both things, you know, instead of... I think it could have been very easy to just throw up, like, Elise and someone else and be like, well, one of you is the pawn, like, Elise is the target, like, send her home, like, let's make final 6. And that would be, like, such a bad move. And at the same time, like, he took the risk and, like, bit the bullet, because that comp that he won, ball toss, is one that you can easily throw by responding to a fake prompt. And he decided to get the blood on his hands, even though he's probably safe, take the first shot, so to speak, at his own alliance. And so I think, like, that speaks really highly of his game and his game awareness.
I was just like, I remember being on a call with Mikki and Addilyn, and it was really interesting because this was after Renom, but before it was like the day before Addilyn went home or whatever. And they were talking, and then Addilyn made a comment being like, I don't know why Ferg wouldn't go for Elise. And then Mikki was like, it's because he knew he was on the bottom of the 6. And Addilyn's like, that's true. Like, he had, like, props to him for actually recognizing that and not missing the swing. And I feel like, again, to Mikki and Addilyn, like, it's credit to him because it's like, he recognized that if he took out Elise himself, would have been probably one of the worst HOHs for him. And we also see Elise win the next HOH and keep them safe completely. When Ferg could be like an ideal person to get out in a live night.
Yeah.
So it's like, it was really smart. Like, props to Ferg completely, like, for like having his pulse on the game, or finger on the pulse of the game.
Yeah.
All I was going to say is that I think Jakey winning veto was actually very good for him, because Jakey was like a shield the size of the sun, because to be honest, like, a lot of people were kind of frustrated with Jakey and just kind of wanted to see him go. So in a way, Jakey winning veto and meaning that Ferg had to take out like a threat of like a slightly lower level, actually I think benefited him a lot.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think too, like, everyone's strategy at that point basically was to keep Jakey in the game, like, to be a shield. And at some point, it's like, if everyone's doing that, then it's not a shield. If it's a shield for everyone, you know. But yeah, I totally agree. I think, like, that transitions us well into the double, where Elise, who's the one person not aligned with everyone, wins HOH. Kind of stumbles a little bit by putting up Jakey and Mikki. She wins veto, has an opportunity to make, like, to really change the game, like, in this moment, and sends home Jakey, which I think it's, like, glaringly obvious that, like, her best move was to get out Szymon, but I do think that to her, like, defense, Szymon, like, really talked to her and really buttered her up and really convinced her that he was, like, on her side. He was gonna, like, go after Mikki. He was gonna go after Jakey. He was gonna, you know, like, side with her if he won HOH, and that they were good and that they had a target list together. And so I think that, to some extent, like, that's just his good gameplay. And I think it's more of, like, a plus on his column than, like, a minus on her column, because I think with the information that she knew at the time, she was doing what she thought was best for her game. And there was no way, because Mikki and Szymon had done such a good job at hiding their duo, that I guess she just couldn't put that together. But I do think my last thing is, on a TV standpoint, Elise winning HOH and veto was, like, very iconic. Like, her whole, like, reaction to it, just, like, the fact that everyone shot themselves and then she won by default, and, like, her having power for the first time in the game. I feel like before she left the game, she had, like, a whole, like, 360 experience of, like, being a nominee, having power, and doing all these different things.
All I want to add to that, because I agree with literally every single thing you said, that I think she was so close to being dead on with the right move, and she just kind of just misdirected a little bit, is that I feel like even if she had made the right noms and done a Szymon backdoor and kind of reasserted herself in the game, I think she was screeching towards 5th place for long before she won HOH, and I think she couldn't have made the end or gone that much further regardless. She just could have had a more effective HOH with her time in the game, but she couldn't have, like, drastically shifted her fate with that one week consequence.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't have anything too much to add. I have more of a negative, like, I understand, like, again, it's a lot of credit to Szymon and then as well as Mikki for having the perception that they did together, and also Reese being in such a, like, crappy position and with the limited knowledge that she had at the time. But it still is, like, I still have such, like, this satisfied feeling about it, because a lot of her reasoning for keeping Lana the week before was because of her relationship, like Lana's relationship with Jakey, and that would, like, elevate Jakey's status for her to get power herself and then take out Jakey, which, like, I feel like if she would have put up Szymon instead of Mikki, or anyone, honestly, and keep Jakey in the game, yeah, Jakey wasn't great on, like, a ally level with her, but I honestly think that Jakey would have been prioritized as a target over Elise by almost every other person, and that could have helped her. So again, like, I'm happy for her, great TV, and with the knowledge she had, she made the right decision, and there wasn't much she could do. I just really think it's unfortunate if you have HOH and veto, and she takes out Jakey of all people. And it's hard for me to be like, yay, when it's like, I get why, but I really wish you didn't.
Yeah. But I think Allie brought up a really good point that, like, I think the problem with Elise is that she had such, like, I guess, like, people in the game's perception of her was vastly different than the jury, and I guess, like, how she actually, like, no offense, like, played the game. Like, it's kind of like Kat from Passio, where, like, if you were watching the game, like, at that moment, you'd be like, oh my god, like, she's bodying, like, she's done such a good job, winner energy, but she didn't have the comp skills to, like, back that up. Obviously, like, she won the double eviction HOH, but, like, in the weeks that came, like, final 5, 4, 3, it's like, she did not have, she had the threat presence, but not the comp skills to, like, make it further. So I definitely agree that, like, she was kind of going to get 5th no matter what she did. Like, I don't think she could have prolonged her longevity, like, without comp wins much. But she definitely missed, like, a very vital move as well.
I also think this week, just to kind of give a flip on Szymon a little bit, I think Szymon won this game almost immaculately, but I think this week begun the, like, demise of his jury management a bit, because a lot of his game strength was the fact that he used his relationship with Mikki so effectively on a game level, but the jury perception was that he became, like, Mikki's, like, +1, and, like, and also he, like, played Elise really well, and that's very impressive, but also that's very difficult as a juror to be like, you know what, you played me, made me feel silly, but I'm going to vote for you anyway. That's a hard mental flip to do, and I think that was something that could have been a problem for him in the end.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I guess just to, like, keep moving along, we'll go to the next week, which is going to be week number 13. So this was Szymon's HOH, Final 5. Ferg won the veto. Elise was sent home in a tie 1-1, with Mikki and Szymon evicting her. I guess we kind of talked a lot about kind of, like, this part of the game. But do you guys think it was a wise decision to get out Elise in this moment?
I mean, like, his original target being Ferg was 100%. Like, it's weird. I think Ferg being the target made sense. And I think in Final 5 it's like, oh, it makes sense. But there's a part of me that's kind of like, it would have been smarter to maybe put up Elise and Lana at the beginning. Because if Ferg wins the veto and Szymon doesn't put him up, then Ferg has less reason to evict Szymon in Final 4. And I think if he still does it, that would ruin his trust with Mikki. So, but I mean, like, to answer your question, taking out Elise over Lana, I think was the right decision.
I agree.
Yeah, I do too. I think what this kind of, like, the next 2 weeks of the game, like, kind of boiled down to is just that, like, Szymon and Mikki had gotten so close that, like, their personal, like, friendship and their, like, desire together to make it to Final 2 was, like, far greater than, like, making a big game move or, like, sometimes their own best interest. And, like, that's totally respectable because that's also a part of this game is, like, you do get close to people if you play the game well enough and if you, like, genuinely do care about the game, like, you'll make good connections with people and become really close. And so I think a lot of, like, this week and the week that followed, and honestly Final 3, like, the decisions were very, like, colored with that sort of mentality from those two, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much you can really add in Final 5 specifically. Like, Ferg pulled out a clutch win. Again, good for him. Would have been interesting to see him go home, but him staying and kind of getting rid of Szymon next week was interesting because Szymon had such a predictable winner / 3rd, 4th place energy that we kind of figured it would happen. But I'm still in kind of, like, a little bit disbelief that, like, oh, Szymon didn't win the game. Because I was like, with how good he was playing and how trusting, like, it was just like, I don't think he should have won Final 5 HOH.
Yeah.
Which is weird to say because it's such a small number of people. But if he didn't show his cards, he was close with Mikki. I think he could have won the game, but he played really well.
Yeah. I think,
and it's not his eviction yet, but yeah.
yeah, no, I think we can definitely like merge that with it because there's not much more to say about Final Five, so we can move on to Final Four. I think that it just hits a point in Big Brother at Final Four where like it's 90% comps and then 10% luck. To be honest with you, like it's like the right things have to happen. Like having played, like all of us have played and won like Big Brother. And it's like things have to hit just right. And if like something goes wrong or you have to make a decision you don't want to have to make or get blood on your hands a certain way or you have to like win a comp that you didn't want to win or something like that, it's like that all factors into it. And I think for him it's like the negative of a mirror, like the mirror image where like a mirror everything happened right. They both played amazing, like they're both amazing players, but for Amir, the stars all aligned. He made it to the end and like deservingly won. And with Szymon, it's like he played amazing as well, but the stars did not align, and he just had to like the path was just not there. But I think he's played one of the strongest games we've seen like in many seasons past. Like his use, I forget who it was that said this, but like it's how he used his relationships with people that wasn't in like a manipulative way but was in like a very purposeful intent way of using relationships with people to get himself further and to honestly manage people to not be mad at him. Like he at so many points had to make decisions that like it would have been so much easier to just like throw a comp and like float under the radar. So I like really respected that. I was sad seeing him get evicted because like you could tell that like he knew that he was so close to winning. But I totally like give credit to Ferg though because he's also played a strong game and he made the right decision evicting. Like that would have been so stupid if he didn't evict Szymon, you know.
Yeah, I think like that would have lost him the game
100%. Only thing I want. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, and in this case right now, it's like again, Ferg is potentially one competition away from winning the game.
Yeah. Only thing I was gonna. Oh God, what was I gonna say? I was gonna say one. Like you said, I just really respect Szymon. Like as someone who plays like a not as good version of the same archetype Szymon kind of fulfilled. It was so refreshing seeing someone play under the radar and yet so dominant. But also just that I feel like just the sheer logic of Szymon's game and how purposeful everything he did was. I mean, he would even if he wasn't have gone into jury Q&As the favourite, he would have left the favourite in my mind like 100% because everything he did was so logical and so calculated, but in a good way that I just don't see how he would have come unstuck, particularly because like he wouldn't have even gone home at the Final Four if Mikki was an option to be voted out. I don't think.
And even if it was like if Mikki or Lana won veto, he makes final. It's just like as Nicholas also said, it's just like unfortunate like stars didn't align. It just wasn't his like time. But again, he should be so proud of himself and like just like not to praise him again, but it's like he managed to like nominate Elise and then 2 weeks later, live night, not even get put up, and from what we've heard, wouldn't even have been the renom if veto was used.
Yeah.
And then also like be his archetype of win comps when he could have easily just thrown and maintained like how well he was playing. It was interesting and he added a lot and it made 100% complete sense for Ferg to evict him and props for Ferg to winning these clutch competitions and for having his like finger directly on the pulse of the game. And like I also want to obviously credit like Mikki and Lana because they both have played unique and yet good games as well. And I think everyone in the Final Four and now 3, like it was like for a while now I would have been happy with anyone. Final 5, like Elise, Jakey, Addilyn, Daly, like I would have been happy with so many people winning this season, and so it's like...
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now I guess the last part is, well, we don't know what's going to happen with Final 3, so I guess we'll just have to see. I think, like, the only thing that there is to talk about as far as Final 3 is concerned, it seems like one of two things will happen. One of three things will happen. One, Lana emerges a comp beast and snaps, and honestly, like, iconic. That could happen. And then if Ferg went... I don't know who Lana would take. I think she would take Mikki, right?
I think Mikki. Lana's a very loyal player.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like she's been with Mikki so much more, especially given that, like, Ferg did nominate her.
Yeah.
I mean, like, Lana did too, but it was at Final 4 when it didn't matter. Like, I think Lana would take Mikki.
Yeah. So that's an option. Then there's Ferg wins and cuts Mikki, which I think is going to be a, like, punch to the gut for Mikki if that happens, because if Mikki wins, Mikki plans on bringing Ferg to Final 2. So I guess I don't really, like, I feel like the Ferg-Lana matchup, I don't really know what's going to happen with that, but I think... I don't know. I feel like it's just like a big, like, I really couldn't tell you who's going to win this season at this moment. Like, I feel like there's a slightly higher chance that Ferg wins Final HOH, but I don't want to, like, Mikki's also so good at, like, guessing and, like, is a very social player. So I feel like jury statements is something that, like, yeah. I don't know. It's also kind of cool because in some seasons it's like there's two people who like are gonna win for sure, like if they make it to the end, and then one person who has like no chance, and then it's like the jury statements is basically like the finale of the game, and you're like sitting in such good TV, and then it's like, well, and then you have to sit through the Q&A, and it's like, well, I don't know what the heck is gonna happen, like basically what's going to happen, so it's really boring. But I don't see that with this. I think this is going to be a nail-biter to the end.
This is a weird thing to say, but in my opinion, all three of the final three give cut that third energy.
Yeah.
That's weird. Like, they all, in my head, the placement I see them getting the most is third. I don't know why, but...
Yeah.
Well, because it's like, Mikki fulfills... I know she's won a lot of comps, but Mikki fulfills the archetype of a really social, like, Jules type player that's so likable, but just can't win comps. Even though Mikki can. You have Lana, who's such a likable figure as well, and has been a major role in a lot of the alliances throughout the season.
Like Rosie from Redemption.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then you have Ferg, who's a comp beast, who's had his pulse in the game, who's really shown himself as a player since his second HOH, and kind of gives, like, I don't know who energy, but just
Anthony?
like, I was gonna say Anthony from like Revival, yeah, where it's like his end game, he stepped it up, and he was just one competition short from like winning the season. So they all give like last year energy, which is again like really weird. But it's also like they all have played such different games, and it's kind of like a rock paper scissors, because it's like Lana could beat Ferg, maybe won't. But Ferg would beat maybe Mikki if Mikki takes him, because it seems like the stupid thing to do. But then Mikki would be...
Yeah, I really think... Sorry if I just... You can finish your thought if I just interrupted you.
Oh, no. I was like, that's basically all I was going to say.
Yeah, I honestly feel like the Mikki-Ferg matchup is very close. I think it depends on... Like, if Ferg obviously is not going to take Mikki, but in a universe where he does, I think Mikki, like, dog walks him.
Bodies him, yeah.
Yeah, but I think if Mikki takes Ferg, that's not going to look good. Like, I think people are going to... It's kind of like how people kept, like, Szymon in the game, because her... Like, I feel like the jury's appeal for Mikki is that, like, she kept, like, no one came for her late into the game, you know? Like, no one really came for her. She was always really well protected, and people should have gotten her out, but didn't. And I think if she can't see that in Ferg and can't take him out, I don't know if that's going to look a certain way to some people. But I also think her, like, reasoning of why, like, she wants to bring Ferg to the end is valid from her perspective. So I think, like, if she can articulate that to a jury, which I think all three of them seem like very good public speakers too, which is something else completely, like, that we haven't seen, because usually there's, like, one person who's, like, a very good public speaker and then someone who's just, like, normal. But, like, all three of them I think are very charismatic. So I don't know. I think... No, I don't know.
You're making points, guy. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like,
yeah, I guess is as good as mine. I guess we'll move on, and we're just going to wrap this up since this is the last cast assessment. Just by going through very briefly each person who played this season. I know some people we talked about a ton, so, like, we'll just be very brief, I guess, with those people. But, like, mainly for the pre-jurors and kind of, like, go through everyone who played the game, like, just say our final, like, comments on them. And then just we'll wrap this up. But, okay, so we'll start with Miss Celina. I think that she was, like, very robbed. Like, it's very, like, I guess, cliche to call someone robbed in this community, because, like, everyone says it every time someone's evicted, but, like, she had a lot to offer, and, like, I remember during her interview, I was like, oh my god, we found the next, like, villain, like, the next big Olivia, like, I'm so excited for her, and I think she had that in her, and I remember her playing, like, Roblox the night before her eviction, bonding really well with, like, Jacob and Mikki, obviously, and so I think she's definitely someone who just didn't get a chance.
She was such an odd first move, so random. And particularly looking at the group that kind of ran the jury stage, she would have fit in so well with them that she just got unlucky that different people didn't win Conta.
Yeah, love Celina, again, at the moment, was super exciting, because while I did like her, seeing Mazden, you know, Mazden Christ, like, persevere, it was fun, but Celina was robbed, and she's, like, somebody I would like to see, like, fly in a different kind of timeline.
Yeah, I feel like she's, like, if Revival was next season, she would be a Revival, like, person.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll move on to Jacob. Cracked King. Honestly, like, if you want to put your money on someone, if/when we do another season, who will be on a season, it's him. I think he just was so fun and crazy in all the best ways, too. Like, I think a lot of people are, like, crazy and, like, act over the top just to, like, be that way and, like, to, like, get awards or, like, whatever. But I think he just, like, wanted to play the game and be cracked, and he was from a community where, like, you play a game in 2 hours, so you play with the intensity of a 2-hour game, and he did that in this game. But such a good casting choice. He was so good.
I just wish he lasted longer, as man, you thought.
Yeah. I have nothing to say. Like, I agree. Like, he was so fun. Such a great character. To this day, one of the more memorable character people of Fiore, and super fun to host.
Yeah. Next is Jared. I feel like we didn't get to know him that well. It's kind of sad. Like, I feel like he was kind of, like, playing the game, started off, like, kind of as Daly's, like, +1, like, kind of finding his way. Him and Elise were working things, and I feel like he's kind of like Celina, where we just didn't get a good, like, metaphorical look at him. Like, we just didn't get to know him that well. He was really sweet. Definitely, like, cared about the game a lot, which was cool.
Yeah, no, it's weird because, like, Jared wasn't, and this is not to be offensive, like, he wasn't super memorable in the first 2 weeks of the game. I remember I liked him, and I wish we got to know him more. But I remember rooting for him during his eviction because of how much he wanted to be there, and like his interview was good preseason. I remember like he was like studying Big Brother and watching it, and so he was like the person who was like he never big watched or played Big Brother, but he's like, I'm gonna brew you, I'm gonna learn the strategy, and like it was sad because it's like I wish we got more showing of him, and I wish that for a lot of the preachers, honestly. Because so many of these newbies were such good, like, unique characters. So it was sad to see him go.
Yeah, I was just going to say really quickly that reminded me of how Lana, when he had that house meeting, before he left, she was like, you're going. Like, I'm so sorry, but, like, you're the one who's... And I think that's what, like, people, like, are going to really appreciate... Not that this is about her, but I feel like that was, like, another defining moment in the game. That house meeting. Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, so next is Brianna, sorry. So I think she, like, was such a big personality, and so, like, I feel like it's very true to the Big Brother, like, actual show, where there's one person who just gets targeted early for, like, no concrete reason other than they just don't mesh well with people, and it's not their fault. It's just they just didn't click well. And I think it was iconic that she won comps. Like, she was so fun while she was here. Yeah, I don't know. I could see her returning one day, maybe.
Yeah, she just needed a different cast. She needed a Ramsey cast. Not, as in, like, the kind of... Because I know those are people she's friends with in this community. Like, particularly the pre-jury, Fiore, and, like, marching band steamrolling. And marching band was always the cast that needed the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a queen. Again, like, similar to, like, what y'all said and what I said about Celina, like, different timeline season game would have been great for her. Just wasn't the stars aligning for her. But she was really fun, out of the lot, was super active, pulling out 2 vetoes, like, I respect it, and I hope she enjoyed her time.
Yeah, she's a queen. So next is Daly. I think, honestly, he was, like, such a big character. Like, I think that's what we've said for almost everyone, but he was so, like, you love him, you hate him, like, and I think, like, the game, like, it's just very true to Big Brother. Like, he was one of those people who, like, came in, he was, like, I admire how he branched out from the people that he knew, and his strategy, like, we cast him knowing that he likes to manipulate people, and that's what he did, and it didn't get him far, but he definitely, like, played hard, so I respect his hustle.
Yeah, I went very back and forth on him, like, God, I was, like, really big. It's like, I almost made him my winner pick. Then he kind of wavered, and then I kind of, by the end, I was like, I really respect that he just goes for the jugular and just goes for it. I think he would have, like, he's another one who kind of got caught out in a really big way, but I really respected his hustle, like, campaigning till the very last moment to get the votes with vote burns, because it turned out lots of people who, all the votes that he could have had, would have needed him later on in the game anyway, so he wasn't even wrong.
Yeah, he was really interesting. Again, like, I loved seeing his eviction, not in, like, a mean way, but, like, to see some type of track with the marching band / the super trio of Austin, Sara, Daly. But as Daly, as, like, an isolated person, like, he was super dedicated, he was super fun. It was sad to see him go in the sense of, like what y'all said, like, he went for it, he put his effort in, he branched out, and I really enjoyed having him this season, and kind of wish he would have ended up sticking around for a little bit longer, but unfortunately that wasn't the case.
Yeah. Alright, well, next is Mr. Rich. I guess my thing with Rich is that coming into this game, he was one of my favorites. I loved his interview. I thought he had such good newbie, male, strong, like fun energy. And I think like him playing the game, like he just like made the game really personal. I think it's just because when it's your first game, you play it so like personally. It's your first time. Like I think he thought the game was like way more like popular than it is, and that like there was like reputation on the line and stuff like that. So I think I don't know. His attitude just got really bad like into the later portions of the game. I think when he didn't get his way, he kind of got a little bit nasty towards other house guests and also like towards us sometimes. And I don't know. I think maybe if he plays another game, like it would be different. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's just hard when it's your first game because you don't like you internalize everything and like it's different people than what he's used to. So I don't know. I think it's just some things are just not for some people, I guess. That's what I would say.
His problem, I thought, was that he as a player, he was so fueled by rage. Like, I remember one point in the CR, and like day 2, he was like, this is the angriest I've been in the game so far, and it was like day 2. And the problem is when you have that kind of mentality, everything feels like, every game move, every comment feels so personal that other players make, that I think he didn't let himself have fun, and that was a shame.
Yeah, I really liked Rich this season, and that's not to say, like, I don't like him now. I just have some type of, like, dilemma with, like, my views on him in terms of he was just kind of, like, I don't know, too emotional for my, like, and it's, like, that's not to say, like, you can't be emotional, because, again, it's your first game, and even me playing, like, my 50th Oracle, like, in Revival, and I get emotional, it happens. I liked him. I did, like, can't lie and say, like, it didn't end with my favorite views, but, I respected his hustle and, like, his dedication to the game, and I feel like he did add, like, elements to the game, like most movies did too, so I respect him, like, as a player.
Yeah, I just like him without the bad attitude would have been iconic. Would have stand. I love the villain. I love someone who's fueled by rage. Like I was loving it until it just got to be too much. I think like also like there's a lot going on in the world, so I think there's a lot of pressures on people. So definitely not like a personal thing. Just whatever. Yeah. Okay. Miss Amanda. I think we talked about her so much, but she was just such like a fun character, and she was so invested, and like it was so devastating to watch her go last pre-juror. It was just hard. I love her. Like she's so crazy and fun in all the best ways.
Yeah, I really liked Amanda. She didn't start off as one of my favorites. Again, she kind of blended in with a lot of people, but she picked up early on. By the time, like, nearing the end of her game, I really came to, like, enjoy her and appreciate her dedication and efforts into the game, and it was really sad. Yeah, iconic, again, like, dying for a good cause kind of thing. With her, seeing her eviction last preacher, like, wish she would have made jury, but, overall, like, I really did appreciate, and to this day, how interested she is in the game. And yeah, I really enjoyed having Amanda in this cast.
Yeah, I agree. I just love Amanda. I'm so gutted for her that she went home so early and by such a weird fluke situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love how she used the veto on Elise that one week when it was like definitely not the easy route, so I respect that she came to play the game. She wasn't just going to take the easy route every week. She was going to do what she wanted to do. So, love that. So next is Sara. So I personally, like, throughout the game, like, I thought she was very like, at the beginning, I was very impressed by her. Thought she was playing very strong. And she did for, like, 99% of her game. But she had, like... It's weird how she started out being like, oh my god, like, she's new, it's exciting. And then I was like, oh, she's always in power. Like, she's playing so well. It's like watching Tyler. Her and Austin had the same energy in that respect. Like, it was like watching Tyler on Big Brother. Because, like, he's doing well. Like, she was doing well. But, like, it got kind of boring, but not because of her. But then by the end of it, I was so sad to see her go, because I think she had so much more to offer to the game. But she's a queen.
Yeah, I really like Sarah. Well, I can recognize that she played a really strong game early on. I know, again, like similar to Amanda, I did not really like Sarah at the beginning. I don't know what it was. She just was probably like one of my like lesser faves in the game. Again, not to be like but near the end, again, she picked it up. She was like, I didn't want her to go that week because she had so much more to offer. She had like comp abilities to change up the game too. She was probably the best like typer on her side. So I didn't want to see her go when she did. I feel like she left like when it was like, oh, I wish she didn't. But I really do think she played a good game overall, and I'm happy with what she had to offer. Am I lagging?
No, you're good.
No.
Alright. So next is Austin. I felt kind of the same way about Austin as I did Sarah, where it was like, I really like at the start was, and honestly the whole way through I was really impressed by him. But he had like the boring like Tyler energy, even though he wasn't boring. Like, I was looking through the DR form the other day, and literally like 80% of them are from him, like detailing his strategy. I think he was such like kind of like Cody from BB19, like just kind of like an odd character sometimes, because people thought they were convinced he was a catfish and a bot or like a twist, and like I just think he had like kind of like, maybe it wasn't intended, but like just like a fun, whimsical like energy to him. So I appreciate that.
He is, I think, the player who is the least like what I expected he would be like.
Mm-hmm.
Like, from night one when he was like messaging like a couple different male house guests the same message, to like just this kind of funny stuff he would do, or the way he was like his hustle and making his alliance last minute. I really, really enjoy watching Austin play. When pre-season I thought I would find him real like meh, and so like I was honestly really sad to see him go home, and I sort of would love to see him play more games and like see how he does, because I just thought he was so interesting to watch play, and I thought his relationship with Haley was so interesting, and how he chose to tell her about the swoopers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I thought he played really well. I kind of thought he was boring. Again, like, it's nothing personal. It's like, he played probably one of the better pre-jury games of this cast. Again, not being nominated at all. Even when his side didn't have power, and even when he was more of like one of the figureheads for his side. And he put an effort, and I really respected his hustle, especially towards the ending of his game when he sent like the big paragraph, and his relationship with Haley taking priority over his relationships with his pre-game people. Like, I really respect Austin as a player, and even as a person. I didn't find it the most interesting, but I had nothing bad to say about him, like, actually, because I think he played really well, and I wish he would have had more time in the game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So next is Miss Mazden, Mazzy Rockstar. Honestly, like, she was a queen, and I think she got, like, kind of a bum rap for being inactive when, like, she's just a busy queen. Like, she cared about the game. She put her all into it. I think you said this earlier, Allie. But, like, given her circumstances, like, she did, like, what she could. And I think that, like, as someone who's, like, new to the community, like, hasn't done anything like this before, like, she did a pretty good job. And she did campaign a lot. And, like, week one was definitely, like, part of the reason why she stayed was because she signed on and people really liked her. People really were like, wow, like, I like her more than, like, the people who have been active. And so I think that that speaks to, like, her as a person being, like, fun and, like, I guess, like, lighthearted. And also, like, if she had the time to dedicate to a game, I feel like she could body it. Especially with comp abilities. Like, she bodied that word search out of nowhere. So, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say my favourite moment of the whole season was when we were on call for something else, and I think Mikki and Addilyn was like, Mazden messaged me, and we were all like so excited, and that was my favourite moment of the whole season when Mazden came online. And I just think Mazden was such a sweetheart. I think she just brought such positive energy, and her and the jury has done the same thing, and I just really, I'm glad she was able to just commit as much as she did to the game, because I just loved having her.
Yeah, I really like Mazden. Again, wasn't the most active, but again, with her circumstances, like, she did put an effort. She was, like, abilities. So, I really enjoyed Mazden, and I feel like for her first game, I hope she's proud of herself, because she made it to jury, she made it to single digits, and she went from almost being first boot to getting 9th place. And I really enjoyed, like, seeing her in the game. And again, like, popping up at the most randomest times and getting the thing with that. I remember there was a time where she was up against somebody, and people were like, how come Mazden's campaign for me, but not the other person? And so, like, she put in work, and I'm really proud of her.
Yeah. I definitely agree. So next is Haley. I think, oh god, I hated her. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, like, yeah, the worst decision ever. Just kidding. She was, like, honestly, like, I feel like every few seasons, or, like, honestly, every newbie season, there's just one person who, like, plays the game, and it's just, like, it's so obvious that, like, they're gonna play again, they're gonna, like, do even better. Like, they're just someone who has become, like, I guess, a part of this series and just, like, really, really, like, I don't know, like, just good energy all around, and someone who, like, was a pleasure every single moment that they were in this game, and that was definitely, like, Haley. Like, she played the game with her, like, wholeheartedly, like, the entire time, like, so invested, and she was so, like, and part of that is, like, the magic of your first game, but I think, like, she's such a genuine person, and it was hard, like, I felt hosting this game when, like, she was going through, like, some shit, and people were being mean to her, like, it was hard to watch, like, when she was on the bottom, like, it was like watching the show and seeing, like, your favorite player get kicked, so I just think that speaks to her as a person, but I love her.
I think Haley's the only person who I was rooting for the whole season. Everyone else, like, even players I like would, like, be in power and be boring, and I was kind of over them, but because whenever she was in power, she would keep it so fresh and just not do what, like, she would have her allies on calls yelling at her to do something, and she'd be like, you know what, no, and would just do what she wanted, and even if she'd be upset about it, I just think she's such a lovely person. I would love to see her play again. I think we'll have to do some bribing, because I think she had one of the most emotionally intense first games ever, but I would love to see her play again, because I just think she's such a lovely, genuinely sweet person. I just think I'm so glad we found her on Twitter.
Yeah, I really like Haley. Honestly, my least favorite casting choice of all time. No, she was great. She was really fresh, added a lot of great elements to the game, and while I can't agree that her decisions were always the best, I think that she had a heart in the game, seeing her jury still so dedicated, having some from family in the VL being our favorite VL people.
Yes.
Yeah, period.
Yeah, shout out to Stargazer. I really respected Haley's hustle, and again, like kind of like what Nicholas said and Allie, she cemented herself as like not necessarily the most best player, basically, but a great character, a good representation for Fiore, and like again, if there would ever be future seasons, it's like she can expect a spot. Like, will it ever happen? Probably not. But I'm really happy with her run, and I hope she's really happy with herself.
Yeah. There's just, like, some players, like Anna Jane, Sydney, like, it's just, like, that level of, like, just, like, iconic. I think, too, like, part of, like, these orgs is not always about making the best moves and doing everything right all the time. And so I think it's, like, yeah, she blundered a lot, but I think part of it too is like how you play the game, and like if you bounce back up and like keep trying, or if you're just like a little brat when you don't get your way. So I think like it was cool to see that in her. So I guess next is Addilyn. My expectations for her were so low. I'll be honest. Like I was like, because her history in the community is like being inactive, like. You know, like, she pops off, like, gets on, like, because we hosted her in a Survivor game, like, a few years back. Like, I've seen her play others. Where, like, super, super inactive. Signs on, pops off, goes nuts, and then, like, signs off, and then doesn't come back. And so I think, for me, like, she blew my expectations. Like, she had a strategic game. She had a social game. She was fun. She won comps. And I think, like, she kind of proved to, like, hopefully herself and, like, also, like, the community as a whole that, like, she can play a game if she tries. And I think for her, it's, like, it's hard when you get into a game and it's, like, over a month long and you're like, oh, when will this end? I think that's why she kind of gave up, was just, like, her goal, it's kind of like Julia Nicole last season. Like, I think her goal was, like, to beat certain people like Austin. And then once she did, she was like, well, fuck it. I'm ready to go. And that's literally what Julia Nicole did the season before. So, and I praise that. So I have to praise her too. So I think, like, she came, she did what she had to do, and then she knew when she was done. So I was very impressed.
Considering how bad of a spot Addilyn was in very early out, like, I remember week 1, she'd be like, loving playing this game, connecting with Austin, meanwhile she would have been the renom. I was so proud of her and the stuff she got done. Like, she had her head in the game. I will never, ever, ever forget Hot Potato when her and Mikki literally ended Sara and Austin. That was so satisfying.
Yeah, that was so iconic.
Like, I just stand Addilyn. I thought she was so much fun.
Yeah, obviously, like, one of Addilyn's, like, best friends, like, it sucks, because I didn't have the best expectation for her. Obviously, what Nicholas said, like, seeing her in her 2 previous games, like, iconic when she was around, but not around. But seeing, like, her being able to, like, win competition, do what's best for her game, and still, like, have friends, because I know she's good friends with Mikki now, and seeing her, like, have a social game, think about the game constantly, show up to, like, all the ceremonies. Like, I was really proud of her, and maybe it's because I had a lower bar of expectation that, like, I'm so happy with her. And I, like, normally when people give up, like, we said this earlier, they go completely okay, and I don't really respect it. I respect Alex. I get, like, it's not the easiest thing to play a long-term org, especially when it's, like, A, you're in power all the time at that point, it gets boring, and B, like, she told me, she's like, I just wanted Austin, Sara, and Daly out. And that happened, and she was like, I'm gone, take me out. Like, and I respect it. I hope she, like, is proud of herself, too,
Yeah. Okay. So, the next person is Jakey. So my thing with Jakey is that, like, I think his brand and, like, what he's known for is, like, going just nuts. Like, being, like, really, like, over the top, like, fun, like, sometimes not fun, like, just, like, very invested and cares a lot, I think, and that's, like, the place it comes from. I think in this game, like, I was excited to cast him and excited to have him in the game because I think he had kind of like a bum rap in the community unfairly because of some things that happened in another game. And I was excited to like kind of give him the platform to like do well and prove to everyone because like we knew that he's a good player, like casting him, like to be able to prove that to people. And I feel like in a sense like he did that and he did prove that he's a good player. He like orchestrated one of the most iconic like flips from the bottom. And I think that that was really rewarding and fun to see on the season. But I do think sometimes things got a little bit personal, but I like respect him defending his friends, and I think that's something I would do, like in a similar situation.
I like. I have like a lot of respect for Jakey. Like, I've played a game in some way he like ended my soul in a game in like such a brutal way. So I was really excited to watch him play. And I think he kind of had the same problem, and I hate comparing the two of them because I know they hate each other. But he has the same thing as Rich, where he's very fueled by anger as a player, and I think that meant that sometimes he wasn't having that much fun. And I kind of hope he can take some positives from this game because I think he's a very well-intentioned guy, even if he comes off real intense sometimes. And I hope he had fun.
Yeah, I was saying on Jakey, he called me a psychopath and made me cry. Love him. No, he's great. Jakey played really well. I can't say I'm surprised, but that's not to like take away from it all. Like he bounced back. He was one of the like spear points for like the flipping in the game and the revolution and like the whole like dynamic change. So like as a player in and of itself, Jakey impressed me a lot and like did the damn thing. Personally, I respected his like relationships with people and his willingness to forgive because again he hated Addilyn at the start and it ended up being like Addilyn's one of his favorite people by the end. There was a sense of like just uneasiness with me towards him because of like him, you know, like leaving the jury chat and like it's just like leaving a distaste in my mouth. But that being something I understand, like I'm really proud of Jakey and he played a really good game and he added a lot to the season.
Yeah. So next is Elise. I personally, like, I know she didn't play the best game, but I love Elise. I was like, I mean, she was my winner pick, but she just, like, the whole time, like, she reminded me so much of, like, Dana and Chloe. Not Chloe, like, in the context of this, series, but, like, Chloe just as a person and Dana, like, just a very fun, like, bubbly person who, like, yeah, she freaked out so much and she cared so much about the game. She didn't know anything about Big Brother coming into it. And I think, like, sometimes, like, we went in on her double eviction and, like, other points in this game, but sometimes I remember she didn't even know, like, what a veto was or, like, how votes worked when she started this game. And I think to even make it to Final 5 with, like, given the circumstances, and she was someone who was on the bottom, like, basically, like, Brittany and BB12, like, with a whole entire alliance, like, left in the game. Like, it's kind of iconic. I think she's definitely, like, a very rootable underdog. She was so fun. And while she maybe wasn't the most savvy player, she was one of the most fun players to watch.
Elise was a very authentic Big Brother player and character. I think you can 100% see her, or like a kind of like a Nicole Anthony the first time or the second time, kind of bumbling her way through, figuring it out kind of haphazardly, but really easy to root for. It's like, you know, this doesn't mean if I want to, you know, on Twitter or on Tumblr, and they're like, oh, this person's my fave, but they aren't quite doing what I want them to. That was very Elise. Like, loved watching her, even when she wasn't always playing the best.
Yeah, I love Elise. Gave me a headache when hosting Mastermind. Whatever. But she's honestly one of the most fun people in the season, and I really enjoyed having her and seeing her navigate the game, play Big Brother, which has no idea what it was, seeing her use the wrong terminology all the time because she's not familiar with Big Brother whatsoever. But being cracked and adding so much flavor to the season, and like, while she wasn't, as Ali literally just says, like, while she wasn't doing necessarily what I wanted her to do, she was like, you couldn't just not root for her. So I love Elise,
Yeah. So next is the worst player in the game, Szymon. Yeah,
Moving on.
yeah, we're like next. Who? No, I honestly, like, I feel like we said this in our Final Four assessment, but, like, hands down, probably one of the best, if not the best player this season or the past few seasons. I think he, like, had such a great mastery of the game, but at the same time, wasn't cocky. Like, I think that's what made him so, like, rootable, was that, like, he knew that he was doing well and he was confident, but he wasn't like, yeah, I'm dog walking this bitch. Like, I'm so good. Like, fuck everyone. I'm gonna win. Like, he was very, like, humble. And I think that that's why the jury and, like, just people in the game just really liked him because he's genuine. I think it was really, I was so glad when he applied. I think he did such, like, a good job and he was fun to have.
I just think Szymon, like me, Lucas, Crow, I'm blanking on all the other like white gay winners, but there are more of them. He had all of us shook. He did like what all of us have done, but so much better. I just think he just really finessed the season. I think he gave off third or fourth place energy from the instant the game started, but that doesn't undermine his game because his gameplay was flawless.
I'm gonna keep this like literally less than 10 seconds because I've said so much already about him. One of the best players this season, both character-wise and player, and I'm really happy he played. I hope he's proud of himself, and I really respect his like humbleness and like him being like, I played a really good game, but it just wasn't it, and not being like pissy about it. And he totally fulfills the archetype of like, if he returns, like people need to watch out for him because he could really take.
Yeah, they need to make him first boot. Like, yeah. Okay, so now we're at our final three. So I guess we'll start alphabetically. So we'll start with Ferg. I think, honestly, like, Ferg was, like, someone who I didn't think I was gonna necessarily really, like as a player. Like, when we casted him, I was like, yeah, he's just, like, someone who really wants to play, and obviously, like, that's exciting, and that's why we put him in the game, because he really wanted to play, and he seemed fun. But he blew my expectations on, like, a fun level. Like, his videos and just, like, his energy in the game was so fun, and obviously he was a good player, too. But, like, he made so much content. I think he was someone who just, like, wasn't afraid to have a good time playing the game, like, work with underdogs. Like, I just really enjoyed having him.
I just think Ferg is such a just genuinely, like, lovely guy. He's just so, chilled, relaxed, and friendly, and, like, every time someone would, like, be rude to him in his DR, or rude to him, he would just kind of go to his DR and be, like, funny about it, and, like, I just think he took everything in his stride, and it was just so lovely to watch play, and so low maintenance, and so just, I don't know, I think him winning would be very much like, he wouldn't be like a groundbreaking, like, new type of winner, because he does remind me of Dennis a lot, in just how likeable and just sort of social he is, and how calm he is, but I think he would be such a lovely winner, and such a good reflection of the positive moments from Fiore.
Yeah, again, like, I can't say, like, he was one of my favorites as, like, a whole of the season, like, in the earlier parts, but I can respect, like, the hustle he's had, the games he played, the comps he's clutched, his, like, recognizing of his, like, placement in the game and fixing that. So as a game, he was really fun. And then even as a personal level, it's like, he's so likable and like silly, and it's like, you don't expect that from him, but he is charismatic, he has personality, and if he wins, like, I think he would make a good winner.
Yeah. And I think, too, like, one, like, thing to, like, cap it off is that people knew that he was throwing comps. Like, early on in the game when he accidentally won that veto when, I think it was Brianna and Mikki were nominated, and he won it and, like, dog-walked, basically, the competition. And, like, I think that's really iconic that he was able to, like, throw comps and actually pull that off. You know, but then also win comps at the same time. Like, it was, like, strategic throwing. It wasn't just, like, throw everything. Okay. So, next is Lana. I love her. I think her energy in this game is just so, like, powerful. That's, like, the word that comes to mind with her, is that she's just very, like, at times, like, her presence was, like, calming, and then at times, well, it was always it was always just, like, she knew what to say and how to say it and when to say it. Like, thinking of, like, Jared when he was leaving. Like, she knew how to say it in a way that was so diplomatic and that was so, like, straight up to, like, the truth. But in a way that was so, like, loving and kind. I think that that's just who Lana is. I think very validly, like, she didn't have to win a single comp to get here. Meanwhile, she was a big presence in the game. And she wasn't just, like, someone sitting back. She was cutting deals, like, working with the other side before certain other people were. So I think for her, it's like, winning comps wasn't an option. And so I think she played a really good game with that being, like, a part of her package, you know, and I think just on, like, a personal level, too, she was so fun, and just, like, everyone loves her, like, literally everyone loves her, and I think if she's in a Final 2 situation, she's gonna be a really, like, big contender, because she's very charismatic, and she's so likable, you know?
I think Lana very much needs, like, a jury that's not fussed about comps, which some juries are, and some juries don't care. But I also just think, around, like, sort of jury, a lot of stuff happened in this game surrounding Lana that was just weird and just gross, and I just think she took it in her stride so well. I just think she's so lovely, and just, particularly because, like, losing as many, like, to put it bluntly, losing as many comps as she has must be very frustrating and very annoying and very demoralising. But the way she's been, because she's had a lot of eviction pleas recently, and she's taken it in her stride and been so lovely about it, and I just think she's such a genuine, lovely soul, and I don't know, I'm just really glad she played the season and stuck it out and made it as far as she has.
Yeah, I'm really proud of her. She's such a lovely, likable person, and she's, like, played the game well. She's not necessarily, like, the most strategically, like, present person in the whole game, but she was still playing the game. She was striking deals. She had alliances, and was sometimes a pivotal vote with each scenario, and was never truly anyone's actual target. And I think, again, like, she has experience as a quester, she's won, she's a very good speaker, and I think she can put up a really good fight in Final 2, and similar to Ferg, again, I'll say this about Mikki too, if she ends up winning the game, like, she would be a good winner, and I'm really proud of her journey, and I hope she's proud of herself too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think all three of them are really great winners, should they win. So, last is Mikki. I, like, throughout this game, like, I feel like I started off this game being a Mikki warrior. I went through my phases. I was like, ugh, hard to watch sometimes. And I ended it being a full throttle Mikki warrior. Like, I think with her, it's like, I think her, like, we saw every centimeter of her game. We saw every thought that she had, and I think sometimes, for me at least, reading it, it was like, oh, well, that's stupid, like, sometimes. But it was just because she was sharing every aspect of her decision-making, even if it wasn't a decision that she went with, or, like, something that she entertained. You know, like, when she had cracked theories, or, like, thought Austin was a catfish, or this, that, or the other. And I'd be like, oh my god, so silly. But I think what was refreshing about her game was that we got to see every single aspect of it. And we got to see, literally from start to finish, everything that she did, why she did it, what she could have done, what she wanted to do. And I think it reminded me a lot of Jules, watching her play in her 2 seasons. It was just so similar, like the process and just like the way that they are and just how thoughtful and critical and analytical both of them are. And I think, like, that's why she was so rootable for her throughout it, too, was that, like, she wasn't on top the entire game. She was on the bottom, like, literally got flipped on week 1. I think that's why Mikki's story is so impressive, is because week 1, she was one of the 5 who didn't vote in the majority, and those people, most of them ended up in the pre-jury. So it's like, wow. And I think she kept, like, a really good attitude throughout most of the game, and I respect that. So I obviously, like, was so excited for her to play. I'm so glad that we got to watch her play. Yeah.
I feel like I've been a big Mikki warrior, like, all season. Like, she would even, like, do dumb things sometimes, and I would defend her for some reason. I was, like, very much on the Mikki stand, like, train. I think she's such a social, crazy threat. I just think she just is so socially perceptive that she has all the tools to just body the game. I don't think I'll say what it was, but to watch play. I loved her and Szymon's duo. I thought that was really interesting to watch. Actually, so I was going to say, I think I said it quite early on, but I think Mikki's one of the strongest players in the cast. So it was really interesting, refreshing seeing her play from the bottom, and it wasn't just like a steamroll.
Yeah. Mikki, my views on her have been very wavy. Like, started off, like, I've never been like annoyed with Mikki. I feel like some of her decisions are questionable. But again, like, Nicholas, you made a good point with saying that, like, when somebody says every little thought that runs through their, like, axon, or whatever, how it works, sometimes they're not going to be the best ideas. But with all her actual decisions, or one notable one with double safety, double steal that I won't get into, I think she's played a very strong game. She's, like, had a social presence, and then following what Ali said, it's like, what makes a player an actual good player is how they play from the bottom and how they play when they don't have the best positioning. And Mikki showed that, like, hey, I'm on the bottom, but she got the jury, she got the final 3, she has such an impressive adventure and journey, and I'm really proud of her, and she's one of my favorites of the season for sure. And I'm excited to see how it goes about, and I'm rooting for her, and I'm just proud of her, and I hope she's, again, with the other 2 as well, like, proud of themselves for how they've played.
Well, okay. Well, I guess that's it for this almost 2-hour long final cast assessment of the season. I don't know. I think newbie seasons are usually, like, to put it bluntly, not the best. And I think that this one was different in that it actually was, like, very exciting throughout, like, 85% of it. So yeah, I don't know. I think it was a good note to take a little breather on. Yeah. So, if anyone's actually watching it, still listening at this point, DM me on Discord.
Yes.
DM one of us.
Exactly.
Okay. Well,